Hello and welcome to episode 59 of The Weighing Room, where the three of us are back together again, going through the big races across the weekend, previewing the action from Sandown, Wincanton and Naas on Sunday, with two lots of Grade 1 action to get stuck into. Frankie, you were at Cheltenham New Year's Day, wasn't you? How was your New Year's Day?
I was, yeah. One of my favourite meetings at Cheltenham, that I think. I love it. And record-breaking crowds. It genuinely looked like day one of the festival. It was absolutely packed. I think there was 36,500 there. So it could have looked like a Tuesday at the festival. Really, really good. And nice to get a few winners. I think we covered only a few races. And between us, we had the pair of them in Sam's Road. We've all been caught in the first. That looks quite a smart horse. And then Marie's Rock, when you look back at that, 11-2 for a dual Grade 1 winner. It looks obvious, doesn't it? I mean, we did have it down as our selection, so we can get away with saying that. But yeah, really impressive as well on the day. Went clear by 4-5, and Nico seemed very happy with her. So a great day's racing, and yeah, really enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, that 11-2 about Marie's Rock was absolutely stupid, wasn't it? I don't know how he drifted to a price like that. And she's obviously around, 4-1, 7-2 for the Mayor's Hurdle now. I tell you what, she looks the most solid at the moment, doesn't she?
She does, yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see on that. Paul, obviously, I just wanted to speak to you before we started the show about obviously the big topical thing that's in the news at the moment in horse racing about the BHA have come out in regards to the whip review, what they were going to do. They've sort of gone back on it. Do you think it's for the best?
So I think it's for the best. It's hard to know how. I suppose, James, I think it depends on how the BHA hold their stance on it, hold their ground, so to speak. I think this chopping and changing, like the whip was the hot topic 10, 15 years ago, probably even 20 years ago or more. But and it's still a hot topic. And I think that's wrong. I think whatever they're going to do, I think inevitably, maybe not in the near future, but I think inevitably they are going to ban the whip. Maybe not altogether. I think they should keep it for safety purposes. Would I be against them banning the whip for the use of, say, for the encouragement of trying to get a horse run faster? I wouldn't. I think horses are naturally a pack animal. If you see 10 horses out in a field, they're generally galloping around together. You won't see 9 of them going off and one of them, doing its own thing. They'll go together. You'll have some at the front, some at the back, and some in between. And horse racing, jockeys trying to reciprocate that. Studies have shown that the whip, the majority statistics have shown that a large amount of fallers have come in races where whips are permitted. Statistically, the more interference in horse races and the more fallers in jumps racing comes in where whips are permitted, and a large statistic of those fallers come when horses are tired and starting to fall back through the field. Statistically also, races, the times of races in hands and heels races in comparison to those where whips are permitted, those times don't differ. And the stewarding, there are less offences committed in hands and heels races than those where whips are permitted. So the stance seems to be the same worldwide. It's something that I looked into in the last 12 months or so, James. And in America there was uproar when the whip was reviewed and what have you. I think in Scandinavia, wasn't there a race out in just before the summer? I think we'll come back to April, where the jockeys literally refused to ride a finish because the whip was banned. It was just like the race itself was bizarre. But it certainly makes for an interesting topic. Like I think we have the best here in England and Ireland. I think we have the best jockeys in the world. Do I think taking the whip off them to make a horse run faster would make them less? I don't think it would affect a large amount of the jockeys. It's one of the hardest things you have to do is to actually get in behind a horse and push it out hands and heels. So a lot of the weaker jockeys in a finish. Sorry
to butt in, Paul. What's the difference between a jockey? Or what can a jockey do without the whip to get a horse to quicken? If you have to ride a race with that and you don't have the whip, for that kind of, I say, final push to kick a horse on, what can a jockey do to actually quicken up?
You change your hands. You get down lower into the saddle. If you imagine you've ridden a horse, you've been on the exercisers. How hard is it on your legs, especially on your groin area, to actually squeeze, get in behind one, change your hands, and ask that horse to extend without having to come up like that? It's one of the hardest things to master. You know, and I think in all honesty as well, if we look at horse racing over the weekend, how many horses are hit for a start? Very few. I think the jockeys do a fantastic job on it. I think it's maybe the stewarding or people outside the sport that are highlighting this. You know, we saw Ryan Moore out in Japan give one of the rides of the year. He never picked. I don't think he picked the stick up once. You know, so there's that argument as well. From a betting perspective, you know, there's also the argument: would you invest in a horse race if you didn't think your horse was getting the maximum? I.e., if your horse was getting a smack, punters probably wouldn't. So there's that element to it as well. From a riding perspective, I don't think it would. I wouldn't ban it altogether. You need it for safety purposes and whatnot. You know, if a 2-year-old's gone down to the start first time out, you know, a 2-year-old colt, especially being a bit coltish and what have you, if you're going in on a first timer in a novice hurdle or a novice chase and they're having a look around or what, you might need to just give them 1 or 2 just to concentrate. As a jockey, I think it would affect you more. I felt it affected me more if you were on one, say, in a 3-mile chase on soft ground that was maybe starting to get a little bit sloppy in the middle of a race and maybe starting to get low at his fences or, you know, miss a hurdle or what have you. I found then the whip was more beneficial, where you could just pick them up, give them one behind the saddle or a crack down the neck just to say, come on here, you know, waking your ideas up. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting hot topic.
Oh yeah, definitely is, and I think you were the right man to ask there because you've explained it brilliantly. But right then, lads, we are a tipping podcast, so we are going to try and put some winners out there for this weekend, and we're going to start with the first race on ITV this weekend. That comes from Sandown in the 115. It's a Class 3 handicap chase over 2 mile 4. Frankie, we'll let you start in this one. It doesn't look the strongest of races for a Saturday, does it? But when saying that, there is different angles for different horses.
Yeah, there is. And I mean, top of the market, you've got another of Venetia's, and she's the Venetia Williams army starting to come out. She's got a lot of runners, hasn't she, over the last couple of weeks? The rains came as well, and she is banging in some winners. So it is sometimes hard to just look past that obvious selection, but I think I am going to. Scipion will be my selection. In funny little name there. Just looked really, really good last time out, I thought, on chase start. First start of the season, first start over fences. And I think just visually looked to just kind of really be enjoying himself out there. Took to fences really well. Maybe didn't quite finish the race out as you'd like, but into maybe slightly weaker company. Off a 1-2-9, 1 chase start under his belt. From the replays I watched back and the fact we don't have a whole lot to go off, I just really like the way that this course kind of travelled and jumped throughout the race. And like I said, didn't finish the race, but slightly shorter and maybe into slightly less company should have a chance here.
Yeah, well, starters will mean to go on then, Frankie, because I'm with you on this one. Scipion for me as well. I think Tom Lacey actually, when this horse ran on Chase debut, I think he actually gave quite a good mention for it, but he actually didn't pan out to be what he thought, but he still thinks very highly of this horse. If you look last season, he was a very nice hurdler. He ran 4 times. He hit the frame in every run. He was then, if you look at some of his runs, actually, he was 3rd in the Grade 2 Leamington Novices hurdle over 2 mile 5. And then 3rd behind Hillcrest at Haydock in the Grade 2 Albert Bartlett Prestige Novices hurdle at Haydock. Those 2 were both good runs, but I think he was always meant to be a chaser. And like you say, he was stepped up to 2 miles 6.5 furlongs in a handicap chase at Uttoxeter. He probably didn't go all to plan, but he still showed enough signs for me that he was going to be a nice chaser. Obviously, like you said, dropped £2 to 129. I think that mark's very workable for a horse like this. Returning to soft ground, which is exactly what he wants. And I thought this race was winnable. I think Venetia Williams is going to have a cracking day at Sandown, to be honest, with the soft ground and with the horses she's put out. But I think out of probably her favourites in the races, Gemma Rande, for me, I think is beatable. So I'm with Scipion around 13-2, and I think he's a cracking price. Paul, who are you with?
I'll give you one guess, James. I am with Precious Eleanor, who's the Daily team are also in terrific form. And Precious Eleanor, she's had 8 runs over fences, which has yielded 2 victories, 5 seconds. She did struggle over 3 miles when last seen at Market Race in a listed chase for mares on the 10th of November. That was in a race won by Fantastic Lady. She finished off last season with an impressive victory over fences at Cheltenham over the extended 2.5 miles. She had 7 runs last season and didn't finish out with the first 2 on any of those 7 runs. She mightn't want the ground too soft, but she has placed on soft and heavy ground in the past. I do think off a handicap marker of 130, she will probably need a career best here, but overall, she's so consistent. And like I said, the Henry Daly team continue in terrific form. And I think at odds of around 9-1, I think Precious Eleanor is a value play.
Yeah, 9-1, and it would not be the Wayne Root podcast or you tipping up every daily or talking about Dundalk, would it, Paul? So
exactly, we'll come to that later.
And like you said with Henry Daly, 31% strike rate. He's running up for the last 2 weeks. He had some cracking winners, hasn't he? 5 winners from 16 runners. He's a yard in absolutely flying form. So Precious Eleanor at 9-1 could be a big shout. We're going to move on to the first event of the afternoon from Wincanton. We're going to cover. Is another tricky handicap over 2 mile 4. Paul, you can start on this one. Talk us through your selection.
Yeah, I've gone with Celebre Dalen, who tired to finish a well-beaten 4th behind Ramsdatelli, having raced quite keenly for a large part of that race when last seen. That was his first start this season, so it should have taken the edge off him. He shouldn't be as keen here now. He was 5th in the handicap chase at the festival back in March. He only faces the 5 rivals here, so in theory, that should help him to settle. And I do think if he settles, Celebre Dalen will take the beating for trainer Philip Hobbs and jockey Tom O'Brien.
Yeah, Celebre Dalen, 11-4 at the top of the market. Frankie, I think you're of the same opinion, aren't you?
I am, yeah. It just looks an ideal race for him, really. Back to 2.5, soft ground, slight ease in the weights. He's had his seasonal opener, as Paul said. So yeah, looks a likely winner here. If I had to give a shout for another, I'd be looking at the top of the market and the bottom of the market. Magic Saint is slightly interesting with Freddie Gingell or Jingo. I never quite know how to pronounce his surname. I'll get it one day. But taking 7 off, that horse was once rated in the 150s and hasn't exactly been running bad of recent. It's just been running in races probably that little bit too good for him. So I am with the favourite, but if I was trying to get him beat, then at the very bottom of the market, Magic Saint would be the one I'd be most interested in.
Yeah, very interesting. Magic Saint around 6-1, but obviously main selection, Celebre Dalen. And I'm going to make it a hat-trick, lads, because Celebre Dalen is my selection as well. I think for everything you've just said, I think this race is absolutely perfect, a perfect bit of placing. And what when I was looking at this horse, what's really surprised me was how much he had in hand like last season, because he was sent to Philip Hobbs and won first time out of a marker 120, then won next time out of marker 126, went up to 135 when sent back chasing and landed a hat trick. Like this horse had probably 20 pounds in hand, and we didn't know it at the time. And he might still have improvement. Yes, he's 11 years of age, and you don't normally see a lot of improvement with horses like that. But he's actually very lightly raced, I think, for his age. He's good over hurdles. He's obviously shown he's good over fences as well. Like you said, Paul, running in that veterans chase last time in Ramsay's Tay probably wasn't his best run to date, but it was his first run of the season. I think he'll be fit, much stripper for that. He was dropped £2 for that. So he's off a mark of 138, which only sees him £3 higher than his last winning mark of 135, and that was at Warwick. So yeah, I think 11-4 is a fair price, and I think any rain that comes will absolutely help this horse. He's won twice on heavy, he's won on good to soft, he's also won on soft. So any rain that comes will help this horse. So yeah, Celebre Dalen to make it the hat trick. Back over to Sandown then for their second event on the podcast, and it sees the Class 2 handicap chase over 1 mile, 7.5 furlongs. Doesn't see the biggest field go to post, Frankie, for this race when you see a handicap like this, but still a nice race all in all.
Yeah, you would expect a few more runners here, wouldn't you? But like you said, not necessarily lacking quality, especially the top 3. Grey Diamond or Ferrero Bamboo and other Venetias that they've tried that. That horse is one of those tricky ones, isn't it? That's stuck between being like a good horse, but is usually running near the top of the weights in handicaps and maybe struggling a bit for it. I'm going to go with the favourite, Grey Diamond. As I usually do when you see Sam Thomas with the horse in a handicap. I mean, he's done a great job with him this season. That Cheltenham form is just fantastic, isn't it? Third behind Amarillo Sky, who went on to win, Fugitive that went on to win. This horse has also won round Sandown before, has beaten the Venetia horse I mentioned, Vero Bambo, as well, off a similar weights before. So just ticked a whole lot of boxes for me, Grey Diamond, really. And I think, yes, beating at Cheltenham, but wasn't miles back. And when you're looking at horses that go on and go up in the weights and racing a handicap following one, this horse should hopefully have a bit in hand. So Grey Diamond for me and the Sam Thomas team.
Yeah, Grey Diamond, 94, top of the market, should give a solid showing. Paul, who did you come down on this one?
I've gone with the Lucinda Russell train, Corrigan Rock, who's won his last two, the last of which came over course and distance, for which the handicapper has given him a £9 rise, which should make life a little bit tougher here. But I was quite impressed with his victory last time out. He took quite a keen hold, and despite that, he jumped very, very well, and he did hit the line quite strong, which is always a good sign. So I think despite that £9 rise here for that last time out course and distance success, Corrigan Rock should go close once again.
Yeah, Corrigan Rock, second favourite, around 11-4, obviously looking for the hat trick. You can tell this is a tricky handicap because we've all gone for different horses. And I'm with Frero Bamboo in this one. It's a horse, he's a bit of a cliff horse for me because I do like getting behind him, but he's finally got his ground. So that's the big thing for me this time around. From a betting perspective, I don't think I'd back him now because he's around 3-1. When I was looking and doing the tips and put the preview up on the winners enclosure, he was 8-1. So he's 8-1 into 3-1. There's obviously a lot of money come for this horse, but a 3-1 in quite a trappy little affair. It's probably tough from a punching angle, but still as a selection, I do think Frero Bamboo's got the best chance of winning. I think if you look at what he did last season, ranging up from like 134 back up into the mid 140s and running well. If you look back, he won an absolute cracker at the Cheltenham Festival in the Grand Annual, finishing third. And that was pretty much heavy ground. I think the ground's going to be very, very soft at Sandown on Saturday. So I think he'll absolutely love that. If you look at his form at Sandown as well, he ran just before the festival when finishing second to Dolos in February. Dolos has made that race like that. Absolutely. He's over the past few years. So to finish second off a marker 140, exactly what he races off on Saturday. Again, that was in soft ground. I think he'll handle the track no problem. If you look at his two runs this season, he ran second on seasonal debut home Time White. Time White always goes fresh. That was at Ascot. That was on good ground. He then went back to Ascot. And he was behind the like of Booth Hill, so Scottish, before midnight. They're obviously very good horses, and we've seen what Booth Hill's gone on to do. He's been dropped back to a marker 140. Started the season off at 142. I think around the 140 mark is exactly where he's more workable. Like I said, he's got course and distance for me. I love the soft ground. It's just his price has got into 3-1 now. So I don't know if it's backable at that price, but when I was looking at 8-1, I couldn't believe it, and that was overpriced. So he's probably into more of a fair price now, maybe slightly shorter, but still, I think Frero Bamboo is probably the way to go in this. And getting his ground, he's got to have a big chance of getting back to winning ways on a day where I said earlier that Venetia Williams could have a really, really big day. January is just her month, isn't it? When other trainers start to have their jabs, flu jabs and stuff, she seems to really take advantage and kick on. So, yeah, she could have a good day. Wincanton's next event then is the Class 3 handicap over 1 mile, 7.5 furlongs. And I thought this, like, again, was another surprising race. It's not the most vintage Saturday, is it, Paul, when it comes to racing? But this race probably doesn't fall into the category of a Saturday race, but still nice enough.
Yeah, it's competitive. Maybe not the most attractive betting opportunity. You know, you might have stronger selections elsewhere on Saturday. But the one I've gone with is the Noel Williams trained Another Crick, who has been beaten a long way on his 2 starts this season. But he is a course and distance winner. He's got the first time blinkers on, and he's got Tom O'Brien on board also, who I'm guessing might have had the choice of a partner in the Philip Hobbs trained Midnight Midge. And if that is true, well, he's gone with the Noel Williams trained Another Crick.
Yeah, Another Crick, 11-2. I think that could be quite a big price. Frankie, who are you with in this one?
Yeah, I mean, exactly the same boat for the same reasons Paul said, really. And like you said, it wasn't a race that, if I'm honest, is getting me too excited on Saturday. And a tricky one to find a winner in. But yeah, I think in races like this, you fall back to what you know, don't you? And of course, in this winner with a good jockey on board, tick the right boxes for me in a race where we don't, or I certainly haven't followed a lot of these horses. And yeah, wouldn't get me too excited, but Another Crick for me as well.
Yeah, I'll make it a hat-trick again at Wincanton. Another crick for me. I think 11-2 is an absolutely massive price for this horse, really. Like you said, it's not the best race in the world, but when you find a bit of value like this, I think what you notice there, Paul, with Tom O'Brien is a nice angle into it. The angle I went into it was he won this race last year. If you look at his form, he always seems to come right around this time of year. And off the back of his 2 runs this season, I think this has probably been the plan to come back here and be aimed at this race. Off a mark of 119 as well. If you actually look what mark he won this race off last season, it was off 122. So he's actually £3 lower than when he won this race last season. He doesn't run bad races, really, although he probably doesn't finish in the placing. He's in and around the frame. And just getting back down to 119, like I said, sitting £3 lower than winning this race last year. I think he's been overlooked in the market personally. He obviously goes well at Wincanton. The soft ground won't be a problem for him if it does come, but he has shown a bit of versatility because he's ran well on good to soft as well. I thought 11-2 was an absolutely cracking price when you could pick holes in a few others. So yeah, another quick for me as well in that one. The feature race of the afternoon and the one we all want to talk about is the Grade 1 Tolworth hurdle. Obviously, we saw the anti-post favourite Lucia come out, which dampens the race slightly, but we still see a really, really good field go to post for this year's renewal. And I think this is probably one of the best renewals of the Tolworth in recent years, because even though we've seen good horses like York Hill, Constitution Hill, Fiddle on the Roof go and win the race, if you actually see what's been in behind them, there hasn't been much. I think this year it's a much more competitive field. And now we see Authorised Speed at the top of the market, 15-8, was second favourite 9-4, been backed overnight. Tarmarus for Paul Nicholls, 2-1. Arctic Brazil is the shock, I think, that was in the race. I didn't expect Henry de Brommer to send him here, but he's got a cracking chance around 3-1, 7-2. Lastro Boy for Evan Williams, 12-1, and then 16-1 bar them. Frankie, we'll start with you in this. It's a really competitive Grade 1, isn't it?
It is. This is the race, like you said, that I think most people will be looking forward to on Saturday. And as far as the 4 you've mentioned there, you could make a case for all of them. Well, Henry's is a who knows. We'll kind of wait and see on that one. I couldn't be putting him up as a selection, but you wouldn't be surprised to see Henry and Rachel come over and win the race. But we don't know a whole lot about Arctic Brazil. Tamoras looks really stylish, looks to have some speed, and I think worth mentioning Lastro Boy beating Tamoras. Could be slightly overpriced, 15-8. Tamoras obviously has a bit more racing experience, but Lastro Boy did beat Nicholls in a bumper and does look to have a bit of a push button speed. But what maybe has influenced the market and has influenced me is how wet it's been and the ground that we're going to get, especially by 225 at Sandown, and the way that Authorised Speed. I mean, firstly, if you go back to the festival, 5th on that horrendous rainy day in the bumper that Facile Vega won, and then winning at Sandown recently on what was, again, pretty testing conditions. For me, that's the influencing factor here. They're all nice horses, but Authorised Speed has shown that he can really gallop and travel in testing conditions. He needs to jump better, but that long stretch you get once they turn for home at Sandown, I think, as we've seen, because he's won there on his last start, in the ground will really suit him. Just hoping he looks a little bit tidier, but he has had a few more racing experience and they would have been schooling in at home. So they've all got a lot of talent. Authorised Speed gets the vote for me on the fact that he won't mind the ground and he will just gallop down that big long straight at Sandown.
Yeah, I'm with you here, Frankie. And I was surprised to see this morning, actually, obviously, we're doing this early Friday morning, that he was 9-4 when I went to sleep and I woke up and he's 15-8. So I'd have preferred the 9-4, but I'm with you for all the reason you said. Authorised Speed, this race has been planned for him for a long, long time, because if you look at when he won his first race of the season at Lingfield, off the back of that, everyone was shouting about, oh, it'd be brilliant in every ground on Sandown in January. And then he actually went to Sandown under a penalty, didn't he? And won with any amount in hand. Yes, he nearly fell at the last, but he's still a novice. He's his second time going round. They're learning on the job, these novices, aren't they? So I've got no problem with that. He did look like a bit of the old Goshen, didn't it? Jamie Moore on the last. I had my head in the hands with a short price, but if you actually look after the race, after that hurdle, he picked up again. He went clear of quite a nice one for Nicky Henderson, and they were well clear. of the third, fourth, and fifth. So that was under a penalty as well. So that was obviously a great run. Another thing on off the back of this horse, he's got the best bumper form out of all of them. He's fifth in the champion bumper on heavy ground, was absolutely superb last season. If you look at some of his runs as well, the way he travels, the way he gallops, just is what I think could be his winning tactic in this race. If he comes to the last and he's leading, I think he'll win this race. If he doesn't, I think he might be struggling because I think it's just a point as I think Tolworth might be a slightly quicker horse. When probably, although Nichols said he'll handle the soft ground, I think he's actually better on good to soft and maybe good. I think he's quite a quick horse. Whereas with authorised speed, I think he just gallops. He wants soft ground. He wants heavy ground. It's exactly what he wants, and he'll get that in this race. So, like you said as well, Arctic Brazil, I was surprised to see him turn up in this horse, but we just don't know what this horse is going to be. How good is that form with Mercury? Mercury was a massive hype horse because he was in the colours of Rich Richier. He was trained by Willie Mullins, and Willie Mullins put him up as a horse to watch out for. But if you look at his actual runs, his bumpers, he ran brilliantly in one. He blew up in another, and in that hurdles race, we don't actually know how good he is. So until we see Arctic Brazil again, we might come back after this and say, look, he's a superstar, and Mercury form's actually decent. But until we see him again, we don't know. So for me, I thought the safer option was authorised speed in the ground, going over the course and distance, and if tightening up his jumping, has a big chance for me. Paul, who are you with in this one?
Yeah, this is a belter, isn't it? Like, you could talk yourself in and out of any of the top three, I think, in the betting. You know, I think the Moore team, authorised speed, as the marker suggests, they've got a cracking chance, and he's been well supported overnight. Arctic Brazil was a good winner of that hurdle race down in Cork, and it's interesting when you start thinking, just why did Henry come over here with Arctic Brazil and Rachel on board? But you know, when there were so many opportunities at home over the Christmas period, so 3-1 could look a bit of value come Saturday afternoon. But the one I've gone with is the Paul Nicholls trained Tolworth, who was a good winner of a point-to-point for Donegal Doyle before being snapped up by Current Connections. He hasn't finished out with the first two from 4 starts for the Nicholls team. He's had 3 wins and a second. I thought he was very good when scoring in that listed novices hurdle in soft ground at Haydock last time out. And the Haydock soft ground, I'd be confident if it comes up testing here that he'll handle it, because Haydock soft does take a bit of getting. So I'm going to side with Tolworth. I'm a huge fan of the Noel Feely Racing Syndicate, and particularly of Dave Cross. He's been a real driving force behind that, and he's been so innovative over the years. Like, I mean, I think when rides were drying up for Dave years ago, I think he started his own car wash and valeting business and whatnot. Like, he's just incredible, I think. And you know, he's so active on social media. He's, you know, you always hear about lads trying to think outside the box, and Dave is he's incredible. He's not afraid to try anything. So I'd love to see Tolworth bring the Noel Feely Silks home in front in the Tolworth.
Yeah, it's a fascinating race. And what you said then about the Noel Feely's Racing Syndicate, they don't seem to have bad horses, do they? If you look at the horses over the last 2 years that they've bought and they're running,
done a good job.
I don't think any of them seem to run a bad race. Like, off the top of my head, Love Envoy, obviously Tolworth, and then you have what is it? What's the horse that ran at Cheltenham? Something Teddy. It's a 3 mile stay. I can't get it in my head. But anyway,
yeah,
cracking horses. Hansard as well looks another one that has come out recently and won well. So they seem to have a lot of nice horses. And look, I hope they don't win this one, because I hope Authorised Speed does, but I hope it does well for Connections. A race that not everyone is a fan of, but we don't discriminate, do we, on this pod for age? And it's the Veterans Handicap Chase. It sees some really familiar faces from over the years take to post, now looking 10, 11, 12, 13. So we don't know how good they are still, but it's a bit of a quirky race. Not all like it. Paul, give us your opinion on the race.
No, you could run this race 10 times over and get 10 different results. And there's a number of these, I'm sure, could read you the race in post. But the one I've gone, I think no one would begrudge the Charlie Longson trained Snow Leopardess victory here. But Ramsatelli, we mentioned earlier in the show, was a good winner last time out. But the one I've gone with, just he's an attractive price, is the Nick Alexander trained Up Kelly AA King, who does have to reverse the form with Saint Javier on their last run. But he's got a handy weight of 10 stone 9, less the £3 claim of Bruce Lynn. prior to that run at Haydock last time out, he did run well to finish 4th of 8 at Kelso in early November when he was beaten less than 4 lengths by the winner. On the back of his last 2 runs, I'd be hopeful of a bold show for Bob Pelly, AA King, and I'm seeing around about 14-1 here, so I'd be happy to get involved with him.
Yeah, you can actually get 16-1 best price about this horse, and second bottom weight, like you say, in a slog over this distance in soft ground, could be exactly what you want. I did look at that horse as well. Frankie, who are you going with?
Yeah, I think that's what you just mentioned there, James. That's what you're looking for, isn't it? What horse can tough it out in these conditions over this distance. And as Paul said, Snow Leopardess, I think, is well worth a mention. And Charlie Longston, actually, another trainer that's in good form over the Christmas period, I think has to represent a solid chance here. I mean, you look at numbers-wise and form, 8th, pulled up before then having some success at Exeter. You wouldn't be too enthused having pulled up twice and then only being 8th in the Beach Chase. But I think this represents a little drop in quality. And coming into a veterans race after having the last couple of years racing in pretty hot company and off an ease mark and with the conditions to suit, I think they'll fancy their chances coming here. So if you get an each way price about Snow Leopardess, a bet to nothing, then not bad. And then the other I like is actually Saint Javier. Paul mentioned he's gone with Up Hellier King to reverse that form, but I'm going to stick with Saint Javier to hold out. I mean, for an 11-year-old, yeah, fairly lightly raced, and most of the racing's been done over in France. 4th at Cheltenham in November before winning nicely at Haydock. At Cheltenham, it was over 2.5, maybe slightly quick on that finish up the hill. Looked better suited over 3 miles. Lily Pinching, a jockey in great form and a brilliant young jockey, gets the ride again. And, not a huge hike in the weights or anything to put me off as such. Only £5 from that last success when being 4 clear, and for me, 1 easy enough. So Saint Javier probably be the easy selection, but Snow Leopardess worth a mention.
Yeah, Snow Leopardess 6-1.
The main selection, sorry, not the easy selection. Well, let's hope it's easy.
Snow Leopardess 6-1. Like you said, it's quite a nice price each way because she'll know she'll run a race. And Saint Xavier 8-1. And I'm with you on Saint Xavier actually, because I've gone for 2 in this race because there's 18 runners and it's an absolute minefield. So thought I'd play 2 against the field. Saint Xavier for the same reasons you said, Frankie. I just thought getting back to a bit of form last time off a marker 1-2-1. He's only up £5 to a marker 1-2-6. He gets his preferred soft ground again. Like the 3 miles is the trip he needs. And I quite like Lily Pinching as a rider. And I think the £3 she was on last time when Saint Xavier won, and he's on and she's on again. So I thought at 8-1, I thought he could run a big race and hit the frame at double the price, around 16-1. Chirico Vallis for Nilmore Holland, I thought was a bit overpriced in this market. He's seen his handicap mark drop to a marker 130, which is actually the same mark as when he last won. He gave his best run last season of the same mark at Chepstow in October, when he went on to land quite a valuable handicap chase, actually, over a similar trip. If you look that day, he went on to beat a well-handicapped horse in Kitty's Light. Obviously, we all know about Kitty's Light for Christian Williams. Absolutely superb staying in handicap chases. And if you look, both of them were well clear of the thirds. Since then, he has run to a good standard without really threatening, but he finished 3rd at 15 at Warwick in the Grade 3 Classic Handicap Chase over 3 mile 5. It's showing he can run over 3 mile 5, shows he can stay in soft ground. His final completed run of the season was 3rd in a veterans handicap chase at Doncaster back at 3 miles, and that he was only less than 2 lengths behind the winner, so another solid run. He was back for another season on debut at Wetherby off a marker 132 in December. He was a 3rd again on soft ground. That was over today's trip. He's now back down to his ideal marker 130, where he was winning at Chepstow. He'll handle the soft ground. Richard McClernand's back on board again as well. Thought 16-1 was too big a price, and I could see Chirico Vallis, the 11-year-old, hitting the frame at that price. But like you said, it's a very, very tough race. 18 runners, all 10-year-olds plus. it's worse than the national, isn't it, for picking a winner a race like this? So yeah, it's a tough one. Right, then the final event from Wincanton we're going to cover on this week's pod is the Class 3 handicap hurdle over 2 mile 5.5 furlongs. It sees some potentially nice staying handicappers go to post. Frankie, who did you land on?
We've gone over to Wincanton.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just flicking through that running that you said that's going to go today in this race. Yeah, I mean, as we're talking, the favourites getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Nearly, as I'm looking at it, probably touching 1 to 2 in places. Having been around even money when I woke up this morning. So probably the most likely winner will be the favourite Chianti Classico on a hat trick. Forkin Bailey has won the last 2 easy enough, and I don't really think in a small field like this the handicap was going to stop Chianti Classico. So Psycho's quite interesting for Paul Nicholls, but you'd imagine he's probably got other plans for this horse over fences, hence why I'm going to stick with the favourite. But I mean, an interesting runner running the Greatwood off a 1.45 at Cheltenham, I think, and obviously has a bunch of talent, but probably not his main target for Mr. Nicholls. So yeah, the favourite to complete the hat trick for me, not much for a price, and as I said, getting shorter and shorter, but my most likely winner.
Yeah, Chianti Classico is going to be tough to beat, isn't he, Paul? You on the same line?
Yeah, I'm on the same. He's difficult to oppose for the reasons Frankie mentioned. He's 2 from 2 over hurdles. He was pretty impressive at Market Racing last time out, and Chianti Classico is the one they'll have to catch.
Yeah, I think we're all reading off the same hint sheet at Wincanton. We should all rock up, shouldn't we? Hopefully have some winners.
Yeah, we'll have a day out together.
Yeah, Chianti Classico, I just can't see this horse getting beat. Like you mentioned, Frankie, I think Jubilee Express runs on Friday, so probably won't run, which will see his price contract even more. Obviously, if you're backing it now, you're going to get a Rule 4 on. You probably get 30p, 40p Rule 4. So it's up to you what you want to do. You just need to probably wait to see if this horse is declared today. If not, and then back it after. But I think he's probably one of the bankers of the day, isn't it? Chianti Classico off his runs over hurdles so far at Chepstow and Market Raisin. He bolted up last time out of a 2 mile 4. The step up to 2 mile 4 has absolutely made this animal. And now handicapping off a marker 131, I think he's beyond that mark personally. I think he's got room to wiggle from that. And you'd like to think, depending how he wins this, he might be able to go on and win some of the races. But I think Chianti Classico, you look at the back of his bumper form as well, it's absolutely solid. So yeah, probably one of the bankers of the day, isn't it? Just got to see what rocks up now. But it looks a bit straightforward at Wincanton for us, doesn't it? If they all go in.
Happy days.
Yeah,
so.
The final event from Sandown then on Saturday is the Class 2 handicap hurdle over 2 miles. And there isn't much to split the top 3 in the betting. Frankie, who are you going for in this one?
Yes, and I'm hoping the winner comes from the top 3. Likely squeeze for Harry Fry, who won nicely after a long break, 532-day break. If you go back to December 2020 and then Feb 21, so you've got to go a while back, but they were trying this horse in a couple of Class 1 handicap hurdles, and although he didn't quite get there on a couple of them, his first in December was a nice third behind Buzz and Not So Sleepy. Then went off to France for 2 runs and didn't do a whole lot there, but as I said, after a long break, came back at Kempton, and for me looked in fantastic form. Opened up at Kempton off a mark of 130, now 136, so back up. But you go back to those 3 runs I mentioned in Class 1 company, he was in the 140s, and I think if anything, he looked better than I thought he had before. So yeah, lightly squeezed for me to carry on from that good opening success at Kempton after a long break.
Yeah, lightly squeezed 7 to 2, and Harry Fry is another trainer in very good form. Paul, for yourself?
I've gone outside the top 3 in the bet, and I've gone with Dr. TJ Eckelberg, who I thought made a pleasing return this season to finish second to 6 over 2 miles at Leicester towards the end of November. He was a nice winner last season at Taunton and Ludlow. Victories followed. They were victories that followed a good second place effort at Newbury. Off a handicap mark of 121, he's got a handy weight of 10 stone 7. So I think Dr. TJ Eckelberg ought to be competitive for trainer Ollie Murphy and jockey Aidan Coleman at around 8-1.
Yeah, you can actually get just slightly bigger, 9-1, what I'm looking at the moment. So yeah, definitely a cracking price and could be better than his handicap mark. And Ollie Murphy had a nice winner yesterday. I don't know if you both saw, but the ride from Sean Bowen, that's probably the best rides I think I've ever seen to get that horse up. I can't remember the name of the horse, but you go back and watch that. It's absolutely unbelievable. So he's had a few winners, Ollie Murphy. Seems to be a fair few amount of trainers in good form. The horse I landed on here was the Paul Nicholls trained ICO. I just think this horse off a marker 131 on a handicap debut could be better than that mark from. He's only 5 years of age. Like, I think there's much more improvement to come from this horse. He was bought by Chris Giles and given to Nicholls after being quite a taking winner at Dieppe in August 2021. Made his British debut at Kempton when bolting up by 17 lengths in a juvenile hurdle on soft ground. Soft ground's the key to this horse, and he'll obviously get that on Saturday. He was sent into deeper waters the next 2 times. Then he was sent to Cheltenham's trial day in late January, finished 4th behind Pied Piper in a Grade 2. And then rounded off last season. He was last seen in February at Kempton, the Dovecote Novices Hurdle, another Grade 2. And again, finished a better 4th behind some nice horses that day. He's now handicapping. He's off a marker 131. The yard's in form. Nicholls been flying all season. I just thought, if you look at his record fresh as well, he's very, very good. So around 4-1, ICO would my play in this race. With Lightly Squeeze, I did look at Lightly Squeeze. Frankie was just, I know we don't discriminate for age, but when I saw a 5-year-old against a 9-year-old, I don't know how much more progression Lightly Squeeze has got compared to ICO from the handicap marks. The one who I think is a big player is Jello for Venetia Williams. He wants soft ground. The way he won first time out over hurdles was seriously taking off a marker 121. I think he could have been carrying a bus that day and still won. If you look at how he won, he was probably just sent out a little bit early at Haydock, stuck in the mud just only 10 days later. So if a bit better for freshness after 38 days at 3-1, that's going to be a real bit of havoc for me to ICO, I think. So I think Jello's got a big chance as well, but I'm sticking with ICO at the prices and off the handicap mark. So 4-1, I'm happy to play him. So that's Sandown and Wincanton covered for Saturday. But we've also taken a look at the big race of the afternoon on Sunday from Naas. Obviously, we're recording before the official decks are out. We do have the 5-day decks, but we don't have the 48-hour decks. So it's the Grade 1 Lullers of Naas Novice Hurdle. And this race always gives us big indicators, doesn't it, for the Ballymore or sometimes the Albert Barley at the Cheltenham Festival. Currently, we do see a very strong field go to post. Obviously, like I said, it's before we know the final declarations, but just some of the horses that can turn up: Affordable Fury, Champ Kylie, Dawn Rising, Gaelic Warrior, Grange Player West. I know what you're thinking. Irish Point and 3-Card Bragg are probably the big names in the field. Paul, we'll start with you on this one. Obviously, it's tough because we don't know what's running, but who would you be with if they do go?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't rule out Irish Point, and I think I know the way you're thinking. Gavin Cromwell's horse is interesting. 2 from 2, wasn't overly impressive in either victories, but got the job done nonetheless, and will be an interesting runner should he be declared. I know the way you're thinking from the Gavin Cromwell yard, but I think as far as the market's concerned, it evolves around Grange Clare West, and the one I'm going with is Gaelic Warrior, who was second in the Boodles at the festival last March. He ran out an 86 length winner at odds of 12-1 on at Tremor in December. Now, Grange Clare West looked very impressive when scoring on hurdling debut, but with the benefit of having those 5 runs over hurdles, I'm going with experience, and I've gone with Gaelic Warrior.
Yeah, Gaelic Warrior and Grange Clare West, they've obviously got big shouts. And I think this is probably the race. If they both turn up, you just want to see who Paul Townend's on, because that would indicate to you who.
Exactly.
Because if he can't make the right decision, what chance have we got? So, yeah, Gaelic Warrior, I've been a fan of this horse, and I think could have a big chance in the Ballymore, and this race would probably be a big stepping stone towards that. Frankie, who are you with in this one?
Yep, same boat. I think some people give this horse a bit of not a necessary stick. I guess they had their pennies on, didn't they, when it was talked about at the festival as a certainty off of the mark, and then got beat by Brazil. Maybe some, like I said, some angry punters who backed it. But Willie Mullins hadn't had the horse very long. He only got it in January, and they obviously were pleased with the mark. I thought, let's go to Cheltenham and try and get a winner, and happy days. but you can't judge that horse and stop it there. Really, it would have trained on. Willie Mullins has now had it a year, and if the 1 to 12 on 86 length success is anything to go by, then it clearly has a lot of talent. So yeah, Gaelic Warrior for experience, and for the fact that when this arrived at Willie Mullins, they were excited about it then, and we're now a year on, and it's only going to get better. So Gaelic Warrior.
Yeah, Gaelic Warrior. Like I said, I respect the horse, got a big chance, but I'm hoping Grange Clare West turns up here, because I really, really like this horse. Bought for 340,000 in December 2020, having bolted up in a point-to-point. He made his rules debut at Punchestown in May 2021 when going on to score easily by 9 lengths. He'd never really had to do much that day to win. He suffered a setback. He obviously hadn't been the easiest horse to train because nothing was said for a long time. But when he returned this season, he went on to win over 2 mile 4 and absolutely bolted up again. And that was quite in tough ground, I thought, and that was by 12 lengths. If you look in both the Ballymore market and the Albert Barley, he went 10 to 1 from 33 to 1 for the Ballymores, and 16s into 5s for the Albert Bartlett. If you look over the last 2 years, you've seen Bob Ollinger, last 3 years, sorry, Bob Ollinger and Envoy Allen have won this race and got on to win the Ballymore. You've seen Ginto win this race last year, go to the Albert Bartlett, and before getting fatally injured, looked like to have a massive chance just about to go up the hill. It's a massive race for the Cheltenham Festival, this is, and I think this is where they'll run Grange Clare West. I think Grange Clare West will go really close, and I think they'll step him up and trip to 3 miles and go for the Albert Bartlett, and Gaelic Warrior will be a close second if running and go to the Ballymore, and I think those could go really, really close. In both the races. I think it's a race you need to watch on Sunday if you want anything to do with the Cheltenham Festival this season, because it's a race shown over the years that it does give us massive indications of what's going to be the best horse in those divisions. So yeah, Grange Clare West for me, just ahead of Gaelic Warrior, but I think whoever Paul Townend probably picks in the race is going to have a big chance. But it's a cracking affair, and I can't wait to watch it on Sunday. Right then, gents.
Does anyone know? I can't think of a horse coming anything close to winning by 86 lengths.
No.
What's the record for a distance victory? It's ridiculous, isn't it?
I think over the last few years, they've only really started to go in Ireland to a certain amount of lengths. I think after a certain amount of lengths, they just said distance, didn't they? So
that's right, yeah.
So 86 lengths is probably got to be one of the biggest recorded. The only thing other with Gaelic Warrior I just mentioned, and it's only a slight niggle because I really do like the horse, but I just want to see him jump left-handed again. If you look at the way he jumped at Cheltenham, he was a bit erratic jumping into Brazil all the time. I'm not sure how he got beat off that mark personally, because it was an absolute gift of mark, wasn't it? But when he went round Tremor, obviously it was right-handed. This time going back left-handed, I just want to see him jump again. So
James is one that backed him. Look.
yeah.
Watching his every move, every strike.
I am now. He does owe me. He owes me. But no, I think they're both great horses. I think Mullins can dictate this race, but I hope to see them both because I want to see them run against each other. But it's a cracking race. Like I said, that's all the races covered for this week's pods. So lads, you know what time it is. It's nap time. Frankie, I'll give you the on again this week. Who are you going with?
Grey Diamond in the 150. If you can play an each way bet to nothing, we love those in the handicaps, don't you? 4 or 5 to 1, play it each way. Will definitely run a good race, and I think has a cracking chance. Yeah, Grey Diamond in the 150.
Yeah, Paul, for yourself.
I'm going to go to Dundalk for the nap. Friday evening.
You do surprise me, Paul.
Well, we've already had a Henry Daly selection, so I'm going to go for the 7 o'clock, which is Division 1 of the 7 furlong handicap, and I'm with the Ado McGuinness train Leclerc, who is a twice course and distance winner. He's won his last 2 starts around the track, the first of which, the second, Bellick from the John McConnell yard, came out since then and was a pretty good winner, I think, within the next 10 days or so after that run. Leclerc then came out, course and distance success last time out, probably wasn't as impressive. Having said that, he got stuck in traffic along the way. I know Connections felt, certainly their initial reaction after the race was to felt with a clear run, he would have opened the gap between himself and the second. I think there's more to come. Draw 1, it'll be interesting. I do think he's a horse that likes a little bit of cover. I don't think he necessarily has to be dropped out, but he does like to be dropped in. So it'll be interesting to see what tactics are deployed from stall number 1. I think there's more to offer, and I fancy Leclerc to complete the hat-trick.
Yeah, wouldn't be the way in Maroon Pod without Dundalk Nap. So yeah, Leclerc, I think we're looking around 9-4. So yeah, got a big chance in the 7 o'clock. I'm going to go for the 13-2 chance Skippy-on for Tom Lacey. Dropped £2 for that latest run. Marker 129. I think he's better than that. Getting back to soft ground, I think it's a winnable race. He's got his ideal conditions, and I think Tom Lacey quite likes this also. At a price of 13-2, Skippy-on will be my nap for Saturday. Gents, thanks as always. That's this week's pod done. Hopefully we found some winners to kick off the year. We've been doing well over the past few weeks, haven't we? A few naps have gone in and a few nice price winners. So hopefully we can keep the good run of form going. And please be sure to like this video, comment your selections or nap for the weekend below. And make sure you subscribe to Wiz Enclosure channel with plenty of content to go through. All the best whatever you're back in this weekend. And thanks for watching and thanks, lads.